Good day, everyone, and welcome to our live ATS webinar, Acoustic Door Assemblies and their role in sound control with Ambico. I'm Fulgence, and I'm your moderator. I'm also accompanied by our team who will support us throughout the event. Today's seminar features one AIA HSW, one GBCI, one AIBD Primary, and is valid for the following Canadian provinces. And we will report AIA, GBCI, and AIBC credits on your behalf within 10 business days. And if you're a member of AIA, GBCI, or AIBC, please check to make sure that your association numbers in your ATS account are accurate so we can ensure a smooth crediting process. And for everything else, you get a certificate in PDF form. That's one certificate for every. That's one certificate you take for every course you take with us throughout your sessions you attend ATS. Those will be available immediately after entering your session code. And if you're new to the session code process, we're going to review that right after the webinar is done. And as I said, at the end of today's course, I'll provide you with that session code that you'll enter into your ATS account. And this number will confirm your attendance and guarantee that your credit you earned today will be recorded. I'll walk you through that right at the end. Let's go over a few quick housekeeping notes to get the best out of today's webinar. Please use the Q&A panel for all questions. Please use the Q&A panel for all questions. Please do not use the webinar chat. You'll see two panels there. You'll see, two buttons. You'll see Q&A and you'll see chat. Please use Q&A for the questions. And if you are joining via mobile browser, certain features may not function properly, like the Q&A or the polls. So for the best experience, we highly recommend using the Zoom app. And our poll questions are how we verify your attendance. So please be sure to answer that as they pop up. We have 2 poll questions today. And if there are any handouts, they will be available in your ATS account dashboard at atsseminar.com. That's the same place you're going to submit your session code at the end. And if you're watching in a group or conference room, please make sure that each and every one of you are signed into the event using your individual Zoom webinar link that was sent to your email. That link is attached to your ATS account, which is how we report credits to the correct person. So if you're not logged in yet with your unique Zoom webinar link, please take the time to do that now. And last thing, if you're having any technical difficulties, try logging out and then back in. That normally resolves most of those issues. However, if you have any issues after that, please let me know in the Q&A panel as well. Do not use the webinar chat. Please let me know in the Q&A panel and I'll try my best to help you there. So with that, here to present acoustic door assemblies and their role in sound control from Ambico, please join me in welcoming Mr. Jack Schinder. Jack, hello, how are you? And you're on mute, my friend. Unmute you. You're still muted, Jack.
There we go.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you
We're
loud
good?
and clear now.
We worked it. I don't have the fancy professional mic that you have. Wow, that's pretty good.
It's all good. It's all good. We can still hear you.
Yeah, well, you're doing this all the time. You know, we're doing it every once in a while.
Every
So
once
you
in
have
a
to
while.
put up with my headset here. Yeah.
It's all
No,
good.
we're good. Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever you're ready, Jack, go ahead and set up that screen share so we can get you started.
Okay. So I'll do my screen share and let me see if we've got it right. Screen 1. How's that?
Oh, we are good.
Are we live? Yeah, we're good.
We are live and good to go.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Take it away, my friend.
It only took 90 minutes of setup, Fulgence, so
only,
we're making it look like it's a piece of cake.
Yeah,
And it is. I've done this particular course probably a dozen times on ATS, maybe not quite that many. So so just before we get into the formal part of the session, I want to welcome you. We have about 150 people online, and Ambico is a long-standing manufacturer of acoustic doors and frames. We also manufacture bullet-resistant doors and frames, radio frequency, products in the dorm frame field. We also do things like blast resistance and stainless steel. So all kinds of what we call specialty doors, acoustic doors being one of the key products that we manufacture. We have suppliers and we have distributors and reps in all 50 states and all 10 provinces. We are based in Ottawa, Canada, which is 150 miles north of the metropolis of Syracuse, New York. For those of you who know Canada better, we're about halfway between Montreal and Toronto, over on the east side of the continent. Um, and we've been involved in the acoustic door business in a leading role for close to 40 years. So it's something that we know very well. And if you have questions that arise out of this presentation, um, with respect to things that maybe you're thinking about, that you've encountered in projects that you've worked on in the past, or that you anticipate working on in the near future, certainly raise your hands and make your questions known. And if we can't deal with it in the context of this 1 hour session, we'll certainly do so uh, in the next few days. So that's where we are right now. Uh, Fulgens, in terms of the screen questions, I'm not going to be monitoring them. You're going to be monitoring them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good. So you'll just jump in,
I'll butt in if
right?
anything pops up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because I
Sure.
won't be monitoring those. So,
Okay.
so the heading here is worth talking about in the term the uh, the terminology that we use, acoustic door assemblies. It's a relatively new term in the last maybe 7, 8 years. The idea of using a door assembly as opposed to a door and frame is it's quite a conscious use of that word, and that's because the test standards in the last 15 years have required uh, um, um, doors to be tested with doors, frames, perimeter seals, glazing, that sort of thing. So you have, it seems sort of obvious that you should want an assembly, but in the past it was separate. And in some respects, in some cases, you still see it today where you have people selling what they would call acoustic seals or acoustic glass. And that may be, and I'm going to get involved in some of those details. Yeah. So the even the heading here is something that I want you to be conscious of, that we chose with a great deal of care. All the technical stuff is here about the USGBC and how you get points. um, so, when we started in the acoustic door business maybe 40 years ago, you could provide individual components, and that increasingly the requirements for acoustic products has been increased from fairly moderate levels to fairly high levels today. And that's because people in life have gotten more conscious of sound attenuation and of how that affects uh, an individual building. I'll talk further in the course about schools and hospitals and residences, and let alone more demanding environments like industrial applications and rocket launch areas and things like that. So I'm going to try and keep it as broad as I can without getting into the real nitty gritty of how these doors are made. I think probably what you're looking for is an easy to use product that at the end of the day meets the acoustic performance levels that you want to try to achieve in the buildings that you're designing. So that's how we approach it. And increasingly, the industry has gone in that direction. And what you'll see is references to STC ratings. You see that here in the on the the term STC is a term that was established by the ASTM folks years ago, and it applies, it means sound transmission class. And we have STC ratings. The higher the number, the higher the acoustic performance. And it applies not only, of course, to doors, door assemblies, but it applies to windows and walls and ceilings and floors and all sorts of things. So it's not a particular standard for doors, but it is the standard that we use here in North America. Sometimes you'll see similar standards coming in from overseas, particularly from Britain or Europe. They have what they call RW settings. They're very similar to these. And now increasingly we're seeing standards from other jurisdictions as well. But in North America, definitely STC ratings are what we're seeing, and that's being overlaid by the requirement for ADA compliance that we we mention here, LEED, which we all run into, and fire ratings. So I'm going to touch on all of those in this presentation, hopefully in my time frame. I've talked a little bit importance of number one and proper security and different acoustic controls. Sound measurements, I'm going to talk about that in detail. Talked about the overall assembly, and I'm going to talk about LEED and how these doors assemblies meet those requirements. So here is where you're going to be running into and maybe running into in a whole wide variety of of different environments. Easy ones are schools, K to 12 environment. You've got, let's say, in younger grades, you've got children that are going to be distracted by outside noise. Um, you know, that's sort of the low-hanging fruit. You've got high schools where you've got audiovisual and performing arts requirements where you're going to want to consider sound attenuation. And then when you bring that over into something like I'm going to say a medical building, and that could be anything from, um, uh, you know, a simple clinic in in a a shopping mall to something as broad as a large city hospital. The issues of sound attenuation and privacy are becoming more and more important, and the products that I'm going to talk about, door and frame assemblies, are a key aspect of that. And part of the reason for that is that doors and frames, by and large, not totally, but by and large, are conceived of as having taking advantage of a 1 3/4 inch panel. Most doors are 1 3/4 inches, and architects and perhaps more importantly, end users expect their doors to function in a manner that is easy to use and conventionally uh, understood. And by that I mean they don't want to see a 3 or 4 inch door. They don't want to worry about the how it's going to function in a new building, and neither do you, and neither do we, quite frankly. So people in the industry have responded to that in a very sophisticated way, and that is by designing a 1 3/4 inch panel that has, let's say, at an STC 50, and I'm raising just a bit of a higher number than usual, although I'm going to talk today between STC 40 and 55. But even at STC 50, we're seeing a broad number of manufacturers that can achieve that rating. And that's similar to what you might see in an 8 inch thick wall, in an 8 inch drywall partition. So the trick is to be able to achieve that kind of acoustic rating in a 1 3/4 inch operable door panel. So obviously, I'm going to say something. A wall panel is fixed. It doesn't move. So that makes it a very easy thing to produce at a fairly high acoustic rating. Doors, obviously, have to open and close. So I'm not telling anything you don't know, but when you think about it, that door has to withstand high levels of acoustic interference. It has to be fire rated. It might have glass in it. And in some cases has to be radio frequency sensitive as well. So that's all in a 1 3/4 inch panel. So to get that product into a normal medical building or military facilities where we do a lot of work, labs, testing facilities, these are areas where you're going to be encountering the kind of products that we're talking about today. So please jump in with questions if you have them, because I know you do. We run into them in residential settings. I think all of us have or perhaps still are, in buildings where we want to maintain quiet and we don't want people running down hallways and hearing noise in the middle of the night. We run into that in hotels, of course, and we run into them in residential settings as well. Not as high a rating, not an SDC 50. We might be looking at, in some jurisdictions, I know in New York City, for example, the requirement for all new apartment buildings is SDC 35. So LEED requirements in schools are at a minimum of SDC 40. So people are becoming much more sensitive to the impact of sound in various settings that we're going to talk about. In the health environment, we're going to run into studies that are confirming poor outcomes when we've got noise in health environments. Not only a matter of privacy, although that's in some cases in certain states and provinces, those are mandated. You obviously you can run into hearing loss issues, but more sort of unknown, I guess, is its impact on cardiovascular issues and diabetes. So noisy environments contribute to higher outcomes, poorer health outcomes. And this is on the right-hand side of the screen where I'm showing, a fairly simple thermometer that gives you an idea of the kinds of noises that we're used to hearing in the world around us. So normal speech, what I'm talking at now, if we were in a lecture hall, I would be talking at about I'd be talking at a higher pitch than normal speech. So normal speech is just when we're in a room together. We're talking very casually, or we're in a conference room and there's only 2 or 3 of us. But when I'm starting to sort of be in a lecture hall, when I used to do these presentations face to face more often, I'd have to raise my voice to project myself, right? So you'd hear me at the back of the hall. You have 100 people in a room and you've got to be heard. So that level of noise is falling in this 65 decibels of noise range. This is a range of decibels, how much noise is being created. And then we go up to something that we've all heard in our urban environments, ambulance sirens at 120 decibels. That's why we hear them when we're in a street and we hear an ambulance going down the street. It's at a very high pitch. Not only a high pitch, I'm using the wrong term, but at a very high noise level. You'll see why I've corrected myself in a moment, but okay. And then by airports, you've got higher levels than that. So this just gives you a very rough idea of noise levels in our common environments. Now, we're going to go on to poll question 1. And I think, Fulgens, you're going to take this, aren't you?
Yes, I will. And there it is here. Before today, did you know that high noise levels can contribute to health problems like heart disease? Yes or no? And 40 seconds. And if while you're working on the poll, if anyone has any questions for Jack, please use the Q&A panel to submit your question.
Fulgens, I like the upbeat musical background.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad you like it, Jack.
That's a new feature.
Glad you like it. All right. So thank you for those who worked on the poll. Going to go ahead and end the poll and share results. And Jack, we have 73% yes, 27% no.
Pretty good. You know, 3 years ago, the numbers would have been reversed, so we're getting the message across. Great. So, you know, health in the workplace is a key aspect of what we're trying to work with. We want to, the National Institute for Occupational Therapy and Health, NIOSH, has established that the recommended exposure limits are 85 decibels at a maximum. I'd say that's way too high. I'd say that's on a factory floor, you might hit 85 decibels. So you definitely don't want to be exposed to that for 8 hours a day. But even in a more common work environment, imagine most of you on this call are architects or spec writers working in, some of you working in small offices, working in larger offices. If you look back at the thermometer that I showed you here, and I'll just scroll back here for a moment, you're probably talking about range somewhere in that 65 range. You don't want to be higher than that. Otherwise, you're talking about you're going to affect performance levels in a negative fashion. You're going to have more absenteeism because people don't want to work in those kind of noisy environments. Speech privacy, I talked about that. As I said, in some jurisdictions, that's mandated. So you're going to want, not only in a workplace, but we all see it in a medical environment. A doctor comes into a room, or you're having, I don't know, psychotherapy or whatever. You definitely want to have privacy in those environments. You also, in government and military, we see a lot of STC requirements in a broad range of meeting rooms, offices in government and military environments. So I talked at the outset about schools and learning environments, and here you have I love the question here. All the hands are up in the air. Um, I guess what we're saying here is, hey, they can hear the teacher, and that's what you want, and you want everybody to be focused. And I'm just guessing by the size of these kids that they're probably about 10 years old, and they've been in school for a few years. And we want to be able to control outside noise getting in from those windows that are on the left-hand side of the screen, to mechanical equipment that's right in the building that creates low frequency noise. And if you're adjacent to, particularly in high school areas, music rooms, shop areas, things like that. So there's a real challenge in being able to control noise in a K-12 environment, and of course in a university environment as well. So that's something that just comes up every day for folks like us that are in the acoustic business. Then a new thing that's come up has been radio frequency shielding, and that obviously doesn't come up in a high school environment. It comes up by and large in a government environment, in a place where digital storage is occurring, where new industry is taking place, where we have um, data centers and things like that, where we want to protect data from bad actors, or just from people mindlessly walking down you're in a hospital and you're not thinking about, you're thinking about some crisis perhaps in your life, or you have a loved one that's not well, and you pull out your phone, and unbeknownst to you, you're walking by an X-ray area or a CAT scan area, and those areas increasingly are shielded from just the powerful phones that we're walking around with, let alone from people that are trying to impact the environment in a very negative way.
Jack,
So a radio frequency, yes.
some people are
Yeah.
saying that your audio is lower for some reason. There you go. Probably that's
How
probably
about now?
there it is. Okay.
Is the audio better now?
I'm pretty sure it is. You continue.
Yeah, I probably put it up when I had a drink during the poll question. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, sure. So radio frequency shielding is not, it's measured in decibels and in frequencies, but the measurement is for radio waves, not sound waves. They are very different. That being said, it's become commonplace to on certain types of projects, again, particularly if there's a military or a governmental requirement for radio frequency to be a factor on an acoustic door. So you've got an acoustic door that has an STC, let's say, of 50, and you've got a radio frequency requirement at 60 decibels of radio frequency. So we're starting to see that, and I'm making a reference here to this type of environment here called a SCIF, sensitive compartmented information facility, again, where you'd see that in that environment. And you can see this door has all kinds of seals and special locks on it to help door manufacturers to achieve those results. So SCIFs is something that comes up only in a government context. So sound transmission class ratings, I think I've talked a little bit about that. Background noise, and I will talk more about sound transmission class ratings. Background noise, which is critical to how we experience noise in a room, and reverberation, the amount of time that the noise travels inside the room. So we're going to talk about all three of those. We're going to measure all of those. So sound transmission class, I talked about STC before, and that measures the reduction of the intensity of sound that's transmitted from one point to another. In other words, very simply, you've got a door that's open and you've got noise coming. You're inside, let's say, a classroom that's got music in that classroom, and you're out in the hall and you don't want that noise to leak out into the hall. So how are you going to control that, the sound attenuation in that room so you don't impact other people? So take it into a meeting room in a secure facility where you've got perhaps top secret discussions taking place. Obviously, you don't want to have people who can listen in on those types of things. And then the more common requirements where you've just got maybe we talked about healthcare, where you've got maybe a healthcare practitioner and a patient talking about personal matters that obviously you don't want those matter. You want to control the sound there. So there's a place and a different place for all these uh, situations where these sound doors can be provided. These are the ASTM requirements. I mentioned that STC is a definition that's provided by ASTM. So E90 um, refers to partitions. E336 is the sound attenuation between rooms. 413 has got to do with the test standard and the sound insulation, and E2964 is specific to doors. I'm going to run through these just on this sheet. You're going to get a copy of this so you can reference these ASTM numbers. They're the ones that we would want to see in specifications. Field testing. Um, Field testing is, I have mixed feelings about field testing. You would think that field testing would be a fantastic way in which to determine whether the product you received was made in accordance with uh, the certifications. And the problem is that in the field, you're not replicating lab conditions. So when you're in a lab, it's a certain volume, and sound waves, of which low frequency, I haven't talked much about the frequency of sound waves. Sound waves have a very broad range of frequencies. And I'm going to talk about those a little later. And those can't all be replicated in in the field. It's literally impossible. Um, so I don't like relying on sound on field tests to tell us whether the materials have been uh, um, provided accurately. Even if they have been accurately, um, the field test might be misleading. I'll give you an example. It's a bit of an extreme one, but I tell it to make a point. Um, we were involved in a project for the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver, British Columbia. It was a huge project, as you might imagine, for acoustic doors. And the biggest area that we had to deal with for sound attenuation was the area where all the television studios and radio studios were. It was a huge exhibit hall the size of a football field. And we provided doors all around that area. And they were supposed to achieve, the spec was for STC 50. Uh, and there was a great deal of concern that noise would get into the exhibition halls from the stairwells, that people would be having conversations or other rooms around the exhibition hall. So part of the contract, our contract was to do field testing. And when the test was to create noise in the stairwells and outside rooms and make sure that we were achieving the STC 50 rating uh, inside the exhibition hall. And so we did that test on 6 different openings, and it was successful. We achieved more or less SCC 52. There was one or two. There's a bit of fluctuation. So we decided, this is a great idea to test how sound is impacted in uh, a small area like a stairwell versus a huge area like an exhibition hall. So we decided we would turn around the sound test and create noise in the exhibition hall, obviously a huge room, into a small area like the stairwell. And we found that the results were 4 or 5 decibel SDC ratings lower using the exact same equipment and with the doors, everything was exactly, nothing was changed. So it showed to us the difference of what happens in the field under optimal conditions when you're using rooms of different size. And so my point is that the ASTM standard is designed around very specific requirements of an acoustic chamber, that there's maybe a dozen chambers around the US and Canada that can do these tests, and they are very specific to the volume of in those particular areas. So that's my little rant about field testing. So you're going to want to know, and I'm talking about hospitals and classrooms, about the amount of noise that's being created, and I'm going to just focus here on this area because it's a common uh, product, a common situation. 80 to 85 decibels of noise, and you want to try to create somewhere in the range of 45 to 50 decibels of noise because that's considered to be very quiet. So in this case, you want to diminish the sound by 30 decibels, but from 80 decibels that you'd have in a classroom. But what happens if that classroom is maybe it's a music room, and the noise in that room is going to be created is more like 100 decibels. Not uncommon if you've been in a high school music room and you have 30 kids playing loudly and out of tune. You wonder how the music teacher can survive 8 hours in that environment. But certainly the sound transmission loss is going to be in excess of 90 decibels. And then you're going to want create, and so you want to get it down to 45 decibels. Sorry, to sorry, uh, the broadcast area. I'm sorry. Yeah. From 80 decibels, let's say, to 100 decibels, you're going to want to create 70 decibels of transmission loss. So that's a completely different type of problem to solve at 50 decibels to 70 decibels. So it all depends on how much noise is being generated in the in area A, and how much you want to try and diminish the acoustic performance down to get to that 45 to 50 decibels of noise. So this is a similar slide that's just talking about the broadcast area. And this is actually of a test showing how an STC 56 performs in a lab. And you can see here that we are testing from 125 hertz, you see at the bottom, to 4,000 hertz. And I haven't talked much about hertz yet, This is in accordance with the ASTM standards. The Hertz requirement, and this is a blow up of that same test standard. You can see this dotted line is considered to be the perfect performance. This is theoretical, and you can see that here that the door performed below the dotted line. So you would think, well, did it achieve the results that, well, how did you get, if this is the perfect line for SDC 56, don't you have to be at that line or above it for the entire test? And the STM standard does not demand that. It allows a certain amount of, these are the amount of decibels below the line, and they have to add up to 32 or less. And if they keep it under 32, then these poorer performances are allowed. And then the averages come in and create this STC 50. So I don't want you to think that when you specify an STC number at 56 in this case, that you're going to get a flat line like I'm showing you here with my cursor. You're not. You're going to get an average at lower ratings. And I think the real question is why is this dotted line so far below 56 in these frequencies? So look at 1,000 hertz, which is considered the mid-range, and you can see the dotted line is below 56 for the entire uh, period of the test. And that's because it's understood in the ASTM standard and amongst acousticians that low frequency noise is going to be harder to stop than high frequency noise. So the ASTM standard allows for that. So um, I'm gonna give you an example of low frequency noise that we've all heard. Okay, when you go to uh, uh, an orchestral concert, you've got a range of instruments in that orchestra, from double basses that are playing low notes to flutes that are playing high notes. This is why music rooms are so difficult to uh, make soundproof, because you've got such a wide range of musical instruments that you have to contend with. So in that range of 125 to 500 hertz, you can see that the performance level in accordance with the ASTM standard is as low as 40 and as high as about 52 here. So when you specify SCC 56, you're not capturing that you're capturing these lower levels here. You're not capturing 56. The 56 is an average of all these numbers. Now, at the high level, flute, you're capturing right on the line at about 60 decibels. And that's because um, the this reference to hertz is the amount of times, it's hertz, it's spelled like the car company, Hertz, and the reference is the amount of times that a sound wave goes past a certain physical point. So again, going back to the door frame assembly, the door is open. That point is the door threshold, the frame around the opening. Low frequency noise, the double bass goes through that opening at 250 times per second. But high frequency noise goes through that opening at 4,000 times per second. So many factors more. And sound, much of which we cannot hear, is created well above 4,000 hertz. But the ASTM standard stops at 4,000 hertz because basically we can't hear above that. Your dog can hear above that, but we can't, you know. So it means that if you have a very specific requirement and you know that you're going to be using only one particular kind of noise that you have to contend with, you might want to consider working with an acoustical consultant or a manufacturer that can get you the precise requirement that you require. And I'm going to give you another example that's not here on the test, and that is, and think of Cape Canaveral, where you've got very, very high frequency noise at very low frequencies. They're not concerned about what flutes can do. They're not even concerned about what conversation can do. They're only talking about very profound mechanical noise, perhaps more normally and more in our own experiences being next to an airport. So in those cases, you're going to be talking about frequencies in this area, and the STC rating may not be as important to you. Hopefully that I'm not confusing you. This is talking about labs. Yes, were you going to say something, Fulton?
Saying we have a couple of questions if you want to answer them.
Sure, I do.
The first one is from Mohan. What class do you recommend for a mechanical room door if it is close to a house bedroom?
Okay. Again, good question and really right. It's like a planted question. Yeah. You've got low frequency noise, and you're probably going to want an STC 50 as a minimum, because as I showed you back on this here's you're achieving these your HVAC systems are probably running in this area of 250 to 500 hertz. So you've got between 48 and 50 decibels of noise there. So that's pretty good if you can achieve that with your STC 50.
Excellent. And I'm not sure if you want to answer this now, but Maria is asking, will you please explain the NIC as it compares to STC? I believe that is obtained by field testing, which is what contractors are requesting versus STC.
Right. Well, then the NIC does refer to the field testing, and I think I sort of, you know, uh, made my position clear about why I think it's an inferior test, or not inferior. It measures what occurs in the field, and that's a good thing. But if the installation of the wall, for example, is not great, or the floors are not perfectly flat, then you're going to know when you do that NIC test that there is a problem. But identifying what that problem is means you're going to have to get the trades involved, or certainly the contractor involved, to say, hey, I specified STC 50, the NIC is coming out at 38. We have a problem here. I don't know what the problem is. It could be the electrical boxes, it could be the floors, it could be the ceiling, it could be the door and frame, it could be all kinds of things. But we've got to get that NIC rating up to the high 40s, if not 50. So
Thank
I
you,
don't know
John.
if that answers your question, but uh, I know I'm going sort of off topic a little. Well, not off topic. I'm off the slides a little bit. I want to tell you another story. As I've been in this business a long time, and I've just seen a lot of things with respect to acoustics. And I remember going into a General Motors tech center in Detroit maybe about 25 years ago, and it was a kind of a lab. It was very high security, white coat. Uh, you had to give them your passport to have them check it a day or two before you get in there, because General Motors was doing all kinds of testing on acoustics in their lab, and we'd supplied about 50 doors into that lab, and they weren't getting performance in some areas. So I went into to the job site, and it was already, the building had been commissioned, and these were PhD guys and women in as I say, white coats, and they said, yeah, we close the doors and we can hear things. And the first thing I do, if I'm being asked to go onto a job site, is I look to see, can I see any light under the door? Because if there's light, then there's air, and then there's no acoustic seal. And sure enough, I could literally put my hand underneath the door. The floor was far from flat. And this was in an acoustic lab with dozens of PhDs in acoustics. And they didn't bother to look. I mean, I didn't expect them to be able to design a door, but they didn't have the good sense to look and say, hey, there might be a problem here with the way this building has been built that's causing us to have a sound leak. And so that's the problem with an NIC test. That's the limitation, if you will, with an NIC test. So there I go. Lead for schools, we're seeing that more and more often. Lead requirements minimum STC 40 to get higher levels of sound attenuation. And background noise due to transportation. Here you see a truck coming into into a building area. You see planes, all these sorts of things are things that that you have to encounter. And I won't tell you any more stories because I have a time pressure. I want to be sensitive to our time at this point because I've really haven't gone far enough. So, choosing the right acoustic ratings, I'm going to ask you to look at those charts, and if there are any questions you have about how to, as you just did about, an HVAC next to an apartment, again, a common problem. HVAC systems, again, that low frequency noise is really tough. You want to be able to isolate those HVAC systems, and often when you're in a classroom, you want to be sure that there's none of that background noise. So that's just a common area. You want to be able to create an entire system here. We're in an auditorium. Of course, we're all familiar with this sort of environment. This actually looks a bit like a lecture hall. And You want to be able to create, here you've got sound baffles going on the side here. Strangely enough, I don't know why we chose this photo. There's no doors in this one, but there would be, obviously coming into exit areas and things like that. So we're going to get on to poll question 2 here. And I've been talking about some of these issues, and I'll throw it back to you, Fulgens.
Yes, how often do you specify an acoustic door as part of a complete acoustic door and frame assembly? Always, sometimes, or never? And you have about 40 seconds on the clock to respond to that. And in the meantime, Jack, so this is the follow up to Maria's question earlier. Maria's asking, would you go 1-to-1, meaning specify STC 50 and require NIC 50?
That's a good question. They're measuring different things. So the STC 50 is measuring what we did in the lab, whereas the NIC is measuring what the result is in the field. So you should be able to get, usually when there's another test, ASTM E336, that covers the field testing under the ASTM standards, and it allows for a certain amount of diminished performance. It understands that what you do in the lab is not going to be replicated in the field, whereas the NIC test doesn't really speak about that. So when at STC 50, you are allowed, and to be, if you're in conformance with E336, you are allowed to have a field performance of STC 45. So you're allowed 5 points difference. If you go down to an STC 40, the difference that's allowable is only 3 decibels. So as you get lower and lower, the field performance criteria are less severe. As you go higher, obviously the reverse is true. They point to different things. When you're doing the STC, you can be sure that the supplier is going to provide you with a certification that says, hey, we did this in accordance with the ASTM standards, whatever they are, the 4 that I showed you before. And here's the lab that we use. There's again about a dozen different labs that can meet that standard. And you have the assurance that manufacturer is going to give that to you. You might also want to make use. A lot of people who are providing assemblies are training installers, and I haven't really talked about that. Certified installers. They come to the factories. Most of the factories, ourselves and a number of others, do this where we do it 4 times a year. We have about 15 to 20 people at every session. We bring them to the factory. They spend a day and a half here. They learn about what we do with our product and how it's installed in the field. And we're taking that show on the road to do it in the field. So not in the field as in on projects, but to distributors and architects in various metropolitan centers throughout the US and Canada. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you, Jack. Let's go ahead and end this poll and share the results. So we have 29% always, 54% sometimes, and 17% never.
Whoa. We got to speak to those 17%. Yeah. So yeah, so hopefully we've made some impact on your thinking by talking about assemblies. And oh, very timely, talking about acoustic door assembly. So there's uh, what we've been talking about, and we're going to get into some of the details. Again, a manufacturer certified installer. Um, Again, a common use of the product in a concert hall. And I talked at the beginning about the size of doors, so up to STC 53. And this is going to change from manufacturer to manufacturer. So I don't want you to think that all STC 53 doors are 1 3/4 inch and that they all have to go to 2 3/4 afterwards. Different manufacturers are going to have different requirements. So I would ask you to, when you're specifying factories, that you look at what's on their website, talk to the local representative and distributor and find out what it is that you're getting, because not everyone is going to be able to achieve this, but there is a variance, is what I'm saying. But the industry has definitely moved towards this 1 3/4 inch uh, door on a conventional. This looks like a conventional frame. It's not. It's heavier gauge. It's 14 gauge. There'll be perimeter seals on it, but we're just trying to give you the impression that it's a fairly normal looking door and frame. This is information um, that really gets into a lot of um, detail, as you can see. And I don't want to go through it with you on a line by line basis, but I want to show you maybe just one line here in this range. And I consider this the mid range, the STC 47 to 51, and talks about what's achievable. This is with Ambico. Different manufacturers are going to have different requirements. So some are not going to be able to get 1 3/4. Some of them are not going to have fire ratings, but this is widely what's available. It has 1,200 square inches of maximum glass area, the weight of the door, the type of hinge, whether it's a cam lift hinge, which is a rising pin hinge, or a conventional heavyweight butt hinge, the type of hardware, various uh, details that aren't on this. I apologize for that. I just noted that the notes aren't there, but it is on our website. This references the Riverbank Acoustic Labs, RAL, that's what it stands for. Here it stands for the National Research Council of Canada, and here it stands for the Western Electric Acoustic Lab. This lab is in Los Angeles, this lab is in Chicago, this lab is in Ottawa, where we are. So all of them in accordance with the national standards for NVLAP, and I can't remember what that stands for, but the National Standard for Acoustic Testing. And this is the range of transmission loss. Remember that sheet that I showed 15, 20 minutes ago that showed the STC 56 with the line going up and down. This is the same information, but just on a numbers basis. And I'm going to show you the same thing with wood. Okay, we're not only talking about steel doors here, we're talking about wood-faced doors that, again, have the similar issues with respect to thickness. You can see we can do a little bit thinner door at some of the higher levels of STC. The STC 1 3/4 inches only up to STC 50. As opposed to the steel, which was 51. So there are some small differences. And that's because a wood door, this doesn't show you the core of the door, obviously, but what it shows is this door actually has very little wood in it. It's got a wood stile and a wood rail and a wood veneer, but the entire core of the door is steel. Um, so wood is a good conductor of sound, so we want to have as little wood as possible in this product in order to achieve these very high acoustic ratings. This is something about veneer finishes, of course, we're going to be very interested. Basically, you can get any finish that you want that's in conformance with the rest of the project. So again, going back to my favorite example of K-12 area, you've got maybe 500 doors in the school, of which 30 are acoustic. You got to match the veneers, you've got to match the finishes, and that's what this is saying. You can do that using different manufacturers. Of course, you're used to that with different millwork suppliers as well. This is the same information, but oriented towards wood door performance. So I'm not going to touch on that. I just want to go through this a little bit more than I have. I talked a little bit about hinges. The use of hinges, whether they're cam lift or heavyweight, is an important discussion to have. And whether they're going to be astragals or mullions, uh, you should always have the vision kit integrated into that door panel or into the side light panel. Obviously, you have a big cutout in a door that has to be acoustic glass. That I would argue has to be supplied by the door supplier. That's because you can't go out and buy STC 50 glass from any of the big manufacturers. Only the smaller manufacturers like ourselves have gone out and tested specifically for doors and frames to get the higher levels that are required. So glazing is important. Fire labels, of course, many of these doors have to be fire rated um, as well, in accordance with whatever the local standards are, usually UL, the UL 10C standards. I've talked about acoustics here, and I'm going to rush through a little bit here for the sake of time, because I think I only have 4 more minutes. Do I not, Fulgen?
To 105, that's when we're going to go over the session code process. So,
Okay, so
yeah,
I'm
if you
going to
could,
push to 1,
yeah,
and so that we have some Q&A at the end, and so
okay.
we have a few more minutes. Um, this seems, again, this goes back to my case about door and frame assemblies. The use, it seems sort of intuitive that you would not base a test on an inoperable door panel, right? You're testing for a door. But we do test, we want to see how a door panel in all by itself performs in a lab. So we do test our door panels on an inoperable basis, basically for research and development. We want to make sure that door is closed and it's sealed perfectly in the lab, and we'll test it that way and say, okay, yeah, we have a panel here. We know that, let's say, if that door panel is tested at STC 50 in the sealed position, that it's not going to achieve STC 50 once the door is operable. Probably lose 2 or 3 points. But unfortunately, you will see, and you have every right to demand to see the test. You're not giving up, the manufacturer's not giving out any proprietary information in their tests. You want to make sure that it says the door was open and closed. It's an operable door, and that's what the ASTM standard demands, that the door be open and closed in the lab before the test. So just be on the lookout for whether the door is tested as an operable or inoperable panel. You want to make sure that the acoustic seals are part of that assembly. That's absolutely essential. And again, talking about you don't want to specify the door assembly in separate components. I got another couple of minutes. Um, I've kind of gone through all this. Um, This really refers to the fire testing requirements. So there's no problem. Everybody in the industry has a product that has high performance acoustic ratings with appropriate fire ratings. The fire ratings are a completely different test. Uh, every door manufacturer has fire rated doors. Not every door manufacturer has acoustic properties. Again, the lead requirements are been around now for 10, 12 years. And this lead V4 is something that we see all the time, particularly when we're talking about a wood door product, but of course it impacts steel as well. The steel industry has always been very sensitive to using scrap and reusing materials for many years, but we see it more when there are wood components required. And so the requirements for FSC are something that you should be able to get in an acoustic door product as well. And yeah, I think I'm going to stop it there. So, what do we have by the way of questions? Anything?
Yes, we do. A few questions came in. Let's see how much you can answer within the 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'll do
Uh,
my best.
First question at the top is does the STC rating take into account the gaps surrounding a door?
Yes. Well, no. Oh, that's funny. When you test to the ASTM E standards, the ones that I referenced at the very beginning, it references a test regimen where the door has to be opened and closed, and then the test starts. So it does take into account if it's in conformance with that ASTM standard, that it does. If it's not, and it's an inoperable door panel that we've used for R&D purposes, then no gap is being allowed for. So the question about operable and inoperable comes into play, and you probably asked that question, I'm sure, before I went through that.
Awesome, awesome. And then if anyone has to step out, the session code is in the webinar chat for you, 145848, 145848. It is in the chat. The webinar chat, not the Q&A, the regular chat. All right. So the next question is, do acoustic doors always have to be used with combination with raised sills or drop sills?
Different manufacturers have different seal options, and it's good to do some research uh, with particular manufacturers. Um, Pretty much people have gotten away from raised sills. So they've created a product where the door can sit on a flat threshold or on a fixed, like a terrazzo floor that's flat. It's really important. I mentioned that comment about the GM Tech Center. That floor has to be flat. You definitely need some kind of seal. It could be a drop seal. The whole issue of seals really ties into the issue of using cam lift hinges, which I didn't really talk about very much today. That in that case, you've got a fixed bottom seal and a door that goes up and out of the opening and then closes and sits on that bottom seal. So different seal options are worth noting. But pretty much everyone's gotten away from a raised sill.
Perfect. Next question is in relation to the question on the mechanical room door, if the door is fire rated, does it come with STC rating as well?
It can, absolutely.
Perfect.
It's widely available.
Under what conditions is acoustical weather stripping and automatic door sweeps merited?
I would say in every case, it's a it you don't want to apply though what a manufacturer like. I have a thing with, and we use a lot of we OEM with a lot of different uh, seal manufacturers. So there's some very good product out there, but you can't buy, quote, an acoustic seal and put it on a conventional door and expect to get high performance. It'll improve the performance. You might improve from an STC 30 to an STC 33. But if the door panel hasn't been tested as part of an assembly, you're not going to get a high level result. So, and that may be fine. You may be in in an area that doesn't require high performance acoustic attenuation, or there may not be a budget for it. But without a perimeter and bottom seal, you won't get above STC 30.
Awesome. Next question is do you carry specifications information for testing criteria?
I'm not sure what in our specs, and I think in most specs in the industry, you'll see references to all the ASTM requirements that I've referred to, and a whole page and a half of references to various standards. So if you don't see what you're looking for, I would invite you to tell me what you're looking at, and we'll help you through it. And any of the manufacturers, I'm sure, would do that.
Excellent. And let's see if we could squeeze one more question or so. Do you see a difference between a hollow metal door versus an insulated door? Is that a big difference or minor?
It's a big difference. A hollow metal door is really not designed as an acoustic door. When you use, let's say, an 18-gauge honeycomb door, and even if you put seals on it, you're probably not going to exceed STC 25. Again, that may be sufficient. If you upgrade that door to a stiffened door with insulation and use the same perimeter seal system, you'd probably improve the performance by about 5 decibels. Again, STC 30, not STC 50. Again, that may be adequate for the building that you're designing. I hope
Awesome.
that answers that question.
Thank you so much, Jack. So we're at 105 now. Jack, you're going to get the Q&A report for the rest of the questions. I see some folks asking about the
Yeah,
session
I'd be
code and
happy to
stuff.
do
Yeah.
that and get back to people in the next 24 hours.
Awesome presentation. Thank you so much, Jack. Appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Charles, I see your question. We're about to get into the session code review process now, so we can get you all squared away with that. There is the session code for you all on the screen, 145848, 145848. And we're about to go into the review of the session code process now, so you guys can get all squared away. I'll clarify the evaluation stuff and everything in a few. All right. Okay, so in order to receive your credit for the course today, you'll need to enter your session code into your ATS account at atsseminar.com. The session code is 145848. The process consists of logging into your ATS account, entering the session code, and completing the course survey. So let's break that down. There's two ways to access your ATS account. The first is via the ATS website, and the second is via the ATS mobile app. And yes, if you do have further questions for Jack, please use the Q&A panel because he's going to get that in a report, and I'll send that over to him. If you go to your account on the website, you need to open up a separate browser window because right now we're in Zoom. If you joined from Zoom browser, go to atsseminar.com. From there, you'll log in like you did when you registered for today's webinar. And if you'd like to enter the session codes on the app, please use the QR code on the screen to download the app. To log in, enter your email address and your password on this screen here. And if you get to the website and it says My Account in red in the upper right corner, that means that you are already logged in. So go ahead and click on that red My Account button, and that will take you to the agenda. And on this screen, you'll see the words Enter Session Code next to the course, Acoustic Door Assemblies and their role in sound control, that dark blue Enter Session Code button. You're going to click on that. And that will take you to the session code box. And on this screen, in that box, you'll enter 145848. Alejandro, do you have it now? 145848. Okay. And keep in mind, our system closes out the event within 24 to 48 hours, which means you have plenty of time. So we recommend entering those codes by the end of the day, if so there are no issues with processing the certificates into your ATS account. So once you added the session code here, click on that dark blue circle under the text entry field, and it'll take you to the course survey. So now the course survey is 6 multiple choice questions and 1 open-ended question for presenter feedback. You do need to provide feedback in order for your session code to process. All right, so once you enter that, hit the Confirm My Presence button. And that'll take you right back to the agenda on the first page. So if everything was entered correctly, you should see Presence Confirmed. Once again, once you get to that evaluation page, you do have to complete that in order for you to get to the next screen for your session code to process, and then you'll see the button change to Presence Confirmed in green. All right, and that's it. So if anyone has any questions, please be sure to reach out using the Q&A, and I'll help you before I close out this webinar. And after you've entered your session code, you'll be able to retrieve your certificate. So retrieve by clicking the certificates button, and that's tiny certificate icon next to the course, and you will see something like this. And your certificate will be available in PDF format. And that is it, my friends. If you need any last minute credits, visit the ATS On Demand course catalog at atsseminar.com. seminar.com. And if you haven't done so already, please join us, follow us on LinkedIn. We have a podcast. We have a live podcast at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on our ATS LinkedIn page. So we hope that you join us there. And I'll share the link in the chat for you all for the link. If you've, well, you just go to LinkedIn and just find us there. Just look for ATS. If I can't find the QR code, hold on. Let me see if I can get the QR code on the screen here. I'm trying. There it is. There's the QR code. So take a screenshot of that or whatever the case might be. There it is. So just use that. That'll take you directly to our LinkedIn. So we have an awesome podcast today at 2:30 live on LinkedIn. So please join us for that. And I'll leave that up for a little bit. That concludes our webinar for today. I'll stick around for any questions or anything like that. Hope you have a beautiful day. Hope you join us live at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on LinkedIn. Thank you, everybody, and peace. Hello, everyone. Fulgence here with ATS, and this week we're featuring a very popular on-demand course, Prefabricated Fireproof Columns, presented by Trish Brindle of FireTroll. You'll get a quick look at the difference between active and passive fire protection, see how prefabricated fireproof columns stack up against other options, and pick up a few key design tips along the way. And here's something exciting. Trish will be joining Jen and I live right here on LinkedIn next week, Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern for our next episode of Built for This, where we'll dive deeper into how FireTroll's innovative fire-rated solutions are helping design professionals address compliance, performance, and aesthetics all at once. So check out the on-demand course now on atsseminar.com, and we'll see you live next week right here on LinkedIn.